January 2021 solar usage stats from our 4 kilowatt peak array on a 3 kilowatt inverter with a Tesla Powerwall 2 and electric central heating, electric hot water, and also 2 electric vehicles. We pulled 2,188 kilowatt hours from the grid and sent back 1.3 kilowatt hours back in. We had a home usage of 2,207 kilowatt hours, and we only got 74.8 kilowatt hours from the solar. We pulled 422 kilowatt hours from the Powerwall. The 1st of January 2021 we started generating at 25 minutes past 9 and finished generating at 25 minutes past 3 p.m, which gave us 6 hours of generation from the beginning of January. And on the 31st of January we started generating at 8:45 in the morning and finished at 4:45 in the morning, so that was giving us a full hour extra from the beginning of the month. We put in 477.2 kilowatt hours into the Tesla Powerwall and took out 422 kilowatt hours, and that gives a round efficiency of 88.43%. We were self-powered for 3% from solar only and 22% from the cheap electricity from Octopus Agile. And when you compare that to the 2,207 kilowatt hours of home usage we had, that's quite little. But we were 95% self-efficient in the peak time, so we never pulled anything from the grid between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. January 2021 compared with other January since 2012 when the solar went in was pretty average. So a typical January worth of generation. We added 279 kilowatt hours to the cars with a cost of £27.53, but we only travelled 474 miles, so we did a lot of preheating in January of the cars. We did 346 miles in the Egolf and only 128 miles in the Model 3. The generation meters now reading 32,805 kilowatt hours, and that's what we've generated since 2012. We had a small amount of energy put directly into the hot water from the solar of 1.12 kilowatt hours, and that is the excess solar that we've had after the Tesla Powerwall's fully charged. On January the 1st, 2021, we had a home usage of 106 kilowatt hours. We generated 1.4 kilowatt hours from the solar. From the Powerwall we managed to get 15.4 kilowatt hours from that, and we pulled 108 kilowatt hours directly from the grid. We charged the car first thing in the morning, as well as charging the Tesla Powerwall 2 from the cheap energy prices from Octopus, and also heated the hot water early in the morning. The blue spikes are the heating throughout the day. We went completely grid free between the hours of 4 and 7:30 p.m, and then we heated the house again from the central heating later in the day. This is a typical pattern for us. On January the 2nd, we had a home usage of 78.1 kilowatt hours. We added 4.4 kilowatt hours from the solar. We got 16.2 kilowatt hours from the Powerwall, and we pulled 77.6 kilowatt hours from the grid. We didn't do any car charging first thing in the morning on the 2nd of January, but we did charge the Powerwall and heat the hot water. We went completely grid free between the hours of 4 and 7:30 p.m, but we did add a little bit of extra to the Powerwall just before the peak times. On the 3rd of January, the Sunday, we had a home usage of 77.9 kilowatt hours. We got 5.1 kilowatt hours from the solar. We got 14.3 kilowatt hours out of the Powerwall, and we pulled 70.4 kilowatt hours from the grid. There was enough electricity in the Powerwall to get to the cheap rates from the day before. It looks like we've done a little bit of car charging as well as the normal Powerwall charging in the hot water. Central heating came on again, so keeping the house warm, and we got through the peak times again. On January the 4th, Monday the 4th, we had a home usage of 88.2 kilowatt hours. We got 1.8 kilowatt hours from the solar, so that's what we generated. We got 12 kilowatt hours out of the Tesla Powerwall, and we pulled 89.1 kilowatt hours from the grid. It looks like there's no car charging again, so just Tesla Powerwall and hot water charging first thing in the morning. The electric boiler kicking in, which is the high spike. The central heating kicking in throughout the day, and again we were completely self-powered between the hours of 4 PM and 7:30. On Tuesday the 5th of January we had a home usage of 85 kilowatt hours. We got 5.1 kilowatt hours from the solar, so quite a good day, in fact one of the best days we had up until that date. We got 15.5 kilowatt hours from the Powerwall, and we pulled 80.8 kilowatt hours from the grid. There was some very, very early hours of car charging first thing in the morning, and that was from the ohme charger, and again we added a little bit more later in the early hours of the morning. We got all the way through the peak times, and we also added a little bit to the Powerwall from the solar, and this may have been the day where we were actually adding to the hot water as well. On Wednesday the 6th of January we pulled 61.8 kilowatt hours from the grid. We had a solar contribution of 1.8 kilowatt hours, so a lot less than yesterday. From the Powerwall we pulled 17.7 kilowatt hours, so that means we've charged the Powerwall at least once, and we pulled 62.2 kilowatt hours from the grid. So again, Tesla Powerwall 2 charging, a little bit of car charging from about an hour, and the hot water also charged up. The boiler kicked in, and that took some of the power from the Tesla Powerwall, but around midday the Powerwall filled up again, and just before 4 PM as well, before we were fully self-powered between 4 and 7:30 PM. On Thursday the 7th of January we had a home usage of 60.4 kilowatt hours, so still very high. We had a solar contribution of 2.5 kilowatt hours, which was pretty average throughout the month. We got 13.3 kilowatt hours from the Powerwall, so that looks like just one full discharge, and we pulled 59.6 kilowatt hours from the grid. There was no car charging, so just Powerwall and hot water charging up first thing in the morning. Some central heating kicking on, and that continued throughout the day. We got a little bit extra back into the Powerwall just before peak, but then we were self-powered through peak before exhausting the battery later in the day. On Friday the 8th of January we had a home usage of 71.7 kilowatt hours. We got 0.7 kilowatt hours from the solar, so not a lot at all. We managed to get 15.1 kilowatt hours from the Powerwall, so there was at least the early morning charging from that, and we pulled 73.1 kilowatt hours from the grid. So no car charging first thing in the morning again, and the boiler kicking in later on. That's the big 13 kilowatt spikes, and that was kicking in a few times throughout the day. The Tesla Powerwall did top up a little bit more through the day to make sure we had enough power to get through the peak times, and then the boiler kicking on at the end of the day again. On Saturday the 9th of January we had a home usage of 64.8 kilowatt hours. We got 6.2 kilowatt hours from the solar, so that was the best up until this date. from the Powerwall we only got 11.7, so maybe not a full discharge from the Tesla Powerwall, and we pulled 60.4 kilowatt hours from the grid. Just Tesla Powerwall charging first thing in the morning in the hot water. We didn't charge the car, so that would have been one of two things. It would have been rather there's quite a high state of charge in the cars, or it would have been too expensive to charge the cars up, and the rest of the day is pretty typical with the boiler kicking in after the peak times. On Sunday the 10th of January we pulled 60.4 kilowatt hours, we had a home usage of 60.4 kilowatt hours. We only generated 0.7 kilowatt hours. We got 18.3 kilowatt hours from the Powerwall, so there was more than one point when we were charging the Tesla Powerwall, and we pulled 63.1 kilowatt hours from the grid. Again, no car charging, just hot water and Tesla Powerwall in the morning. A little bit of the Powerwall discharging before the boiler kicking in, and which meant we had to charge the Powerwall up from the grid again before the peak times, which is why we had a high output from the Powerwall today, and we got all the way through the peak times again. On Monday the 11th of January we had a home usage of 75.3 kilowatt hours. We only generated 0.9 kilowatt hours from the solar. From the Tesla Powerwall we got 10 kilowatt hours, so not a great big turnaround on the Powerwall, and we pulled 78.9 kilowatt hours from the grid. We did some heavy car charging first thing in the morning, as well as the Powerwall and hot water charging. The boiler didn't kick in first thing in the morning, and that's because I was doing some tests to automate the boiler for dependent on the prices from Octopus Agile, but that was a bit of a failure. We got all the way through the peak time, and the boiler kicked in again at night. On Tuesday the 12th of January we had a home usage of only 44.3 kilowatt hours, so that's quite low, and we got 5.1 kilowatt hours from the solar, so that's quite high. We got 13.9 kilowatt hours from the Tesla Powerwall, which is normally about a full cycle on the battery, and we pulled 38.2 kilowatt hours from the grid. All very similar again, so Powerwall and hot water charging first thing in the morning, the boiler kicking in, got all the way through the peak times, and it looks like we've actually added some solar to the battery instead of just pulling it from the grid. That's due to the high solar gain. On Wednesday the 13th of January we had a home usage of 27.9 kilowatt hours, so again very low, but we also had some low solar of only 0.6 kilowatt hours. We got a full cycle out of the Powerwall at 13.1 kilowatt hours, and we pulled from the grid 27.4 kilowatt hours. Now my guess is that was probably a really expensive day, so I tried to minimise the pull from the grid. Looks like we had just Tesla Powerwall and hot water first thing in the morning, and we're pretty much self-powered throughout the day, all the way through until after 7:30 on the peak times, before the electric boiler kicking in after the peak times, which is the large spike at the end. On Thursday the 14th of January we had a home usage of 40.8 kilowatt hours, so still quite low. We only generated 0.9 kilowatt hours from the solar. From the Powerwall we got 12.5 kilowatt hours, which sounds like it was more than a full cycle, so probably a double charge, and we pulled 41.6 kilowatt hours from the grid. And that's made up from some car charging first thing in the morning, as well as the Tesla Powerwall and hot water. And we got pretty much all the way through the day on the battery, up until the very end of the peak time, so we're just short of being completely self-powered during the peak times on Thursday the 14th. On Friday the 15th of January we had a home usage of 59.2 kilowatt hours. We got 1.2 kilowatt hours from the solar PV. we pulled 12.3 kilowatt hours from the Tesla Powerwall. So again, that might just be one full cycle of the Powerwall, and we had a grid pull of 59.8 kilowatt hours. A little bit of car charging first thing in the morning, as well as the hot water and Powerwall. We then got a big spike, which was what the boiler kicking in first thing in the morning. But again, throughout the day, just on the Tesla Powerwall. And then we got a big, huge spike at the end of the day when the boiler kicked in again late at night. So we did pretty well on Friday. On Saturday, the 16th of January, we had a home usage of 92.3 kilowatt hours. We only generated 1.3 kilowatt hours from the solar. We got 12.4 kilowatt hours again from the Tesla Powerwall, so that does look like one cycle, about 12.4 kilowatt hours out of it per day, and we had a grid pull of 92.8 kilowatt hours. The large spikes first thing in the morning was the ohme car charger picking up the cheapest rates from Octopus Agile, so you can see that coming in and out, and that happens regularly with the ohme car charger. We had the Powerwall charging first thing in the morning, the hot water, and that happens every day. And then the boiler kicking in, and also the boiler kicking in late at night. On Sunday the 17th of January, we had high home usage again of 93 kilowatt hours. We got 2.4 kilowatt hours from the solar. From the Powerwall, we pulled 12.2 kilowatt hours, so not quite as much as yesterday, but we did pull 12.2. And we pulled from the grid 92.5 kilowatt hours. A huge block being pulled from the grid first thing in the morning, so that's car charging, Powerwall charging, and heating the hot water. You can see the big spikes after that with the electric boiler kicking in, and also the electric boiler kicking in later on after 7:30 at night, and we pretty much got through the peak times again. On Monday the 18th of January, we had a home usage of 65.7 kilowatt hours, so a lot lower than yesterday, so probably not as much car charging. We got 2.1 kilowatt hours from the solar. We pulled 12.5 kilowatt hours from the Powerwall, and we pulled 65.3 kilowatt hours directly from the grid. Looks like we had no car charging, but we did have the hot water and Powerwall charging up first thing in the morning. The boiler kicking in around about 8 o'clock in the morning, pulling gently from the grid all day, and a big pull late at night when the boiler kicked in again. And again, we were fully self-sufficient between the hours of 4 and 7:30. On Tuesday the 19th of Jan, we pulled 54.8 kilowatt hours. We had a home usage of 54.8 kilowatt hours. We got 1.1 kilowatt hours from the solar. From the Powerwall, we pulled 11.4 kilowatt hours, so that was a little bit down. And we pulled 56.5 kilowatt hours directly from the grid. There was no car charging first thing in the morning. So just Powerwall and hot water, and then the electric boiler kicked in hard. We're pretty much self-sufficient throughout the day, maybe just gentle pulls from the grid. Self-sufficient between the hours of 4 PM and 7:30, and the boiler kicking in again later on. On Wednesday the 20th of Jan, we had a home usage of 58.8 kilowatt hours. We only generated 0.5 kilowatt hours from the solar. We got 13.2 kilowatt hours from the Powerwall, so probably charging more than once. We had a grid pull of 59 kilowatt hours. So a pretty standard day again. Tesla Powerwall charging in the morning along with the hot water. Boiler kicking in, which is the large spikes. A gradual pull from the grid all through the day, boiler kicking again late at night, and pretty self-sufficient between 4 and 7:30 PM. On Thursday the 21st of January, we had a home usage of 84.3 kilowatt hours. We got 4.5 kilowatt hours from the solar. We got 12.1 kilowatt hours out of the Tesla Powerwall, and we had a grid pull of 82.8 kilowatt hours. The pattern was pretty similar to Wednesday, so Tesla Powerwall charging in hot water first thing in the morning, followed by the boiler kicking in, self-sufficient between 4 and 7:30 p.m. and the boiler kicking in again. Moving on to Friday the 22nd of January, we had a home usage of 60.1 kilowatt hours. We got 5.2 kilowatt hours from the solar, so a pretty decent day for what we have here. We got 15 kilowatt hours out of the Powerwall, so that could have been a combination of the initial grid pull first thing in the morning and solar charging. And we pulled 55.6 kilowatt hours from the grid. So the boiler kicked in twice again. It looks like we had a bit of grid pull during peak times, and that'll be because the Tesla Powerwall ran out of power. Moving on to Saturday the 23rd of Jan, so weekends again. So a big pull of 80.8 kilowatt hours. We only had 0.9 kilowatt hours generated from the solar. We got 14.4 kilowatt hours from the Powerwall, so that would have been more than one cycle of the Powerwall. And we had a grid pull of 82 kilowatt hours directly from the grid. No car charging in the morning, so it's just Tesla Powerwall and hot water. Big pull from the boiler first thing in the morning, so it must have been particularly cold. We ran through the day off mainly the grid, and then we got through the peak times from the Tesla Powerwall, and the boiler kicked in for quite some time again later on in the night. On Sunday the 24th of January, we had a home usage of 71.2 kilowatt hours. We only generated 1.5 kilowatt hours from the solar. We got 17.5 kilowatt hours from the Powerwall, so that was definitely more than one cycle. And we had a grid pull of 71.9 kilowatt hours from the grid. So no car charging first thing in the morning again. The boiler kicking in again for quite some time, so it must have been really cold again. Running throughout the day from mainly the grid, but also charging the Tesla Powerwall up again to make sure we got through the peak times between 4 and 7:30 p.m. and the boiler kicking in again at night. On Monday the 25th of Jan, we had a home usage of 86.3 kilowatt hours. We had a solar contribution of 5.7 kilowatt hours, so again a really good day and the best up until that point. We got 14.7 kilowatt hours from the Powerwall, and we had a grid pull of 82.4 kilowatt hours from the grid. No car charging again first thing in the morning. Oh yes, there was some car charging first thing. No, it wasn't. That was the boiler. That's the boiler kicking in. So we had a huge pull from the boiler again in the morning of the 25th. So it was just Tesla Powerwall and hot water charging in the morning, and we had a massive pull again after the peak times, which we were self-sufficient in from the boiler. But the two little spikes afterwards are car charging, so we're charging the car up at night. On Tuesday the 26th of Jan, we had a massive 100 kilowatt hours of home usage. We only got 1.1 kilowatt hours from the solar. From the Powerwall we got 12.6 kilowatt hours from, and we had a grid pull of also 100 kilowatt hours, so that's the most we pulled from the grid in one day, 100 kilowatt hours. And that was made up mainly from a lot of car charging first thing in the morning, and also Powerwall and hot water charging. We pulled from the grid all through the day, self-powered through the peak times, but later on after the peak times the boiler kicked in again, and it looks like we also did some more car charging later on at night. On Wednesday the 27th of January we pulled 75.8 kilowatt hours from the grid. We generated 1.9 kilowatt hours from the solar. We got 12.6 kilowatt hours out of the Tesla Powerwall, and we had a grid pull of 75.9 kilowatt hours, so a little bit more than the home usage. We again hot water and Tesla Powerwall charging. A little bit of car charging in the morning, but not as much as we have been. We got through the peak time, so we're pulling from the grid up until the peak times, and the boiler kicking again late at night. On Thursday the 28th of January we had a home usage of 59.4 kilowatt hours. We got 2 kilowatt hours from the solar. We got 12.5 kilowatt hours from the Powerwall, and that's a typical one cycle. And we pulled 59 kilowatt hours directly from the grid, and most of that's again first thing in the morning when the costs are cheaper. So we had a bit of car charging, hot water charging and Powerwall charging in the mornings. On Friday the 29th of Jan we pulled 70.3 kilowatt hours from the grid. We got 2.4 kilowatt hours from the solar. We got 10.8 kilowatt hours from the Powerwall, so that's not a lot, so it's not a full cycle, that isn't. And we had a grid pull of 71.5 kilowatt hours. Again, the big chunk pulled from the grid first thing in the morning when the prices are cheaper, so that looks like a little bit of car charging, Powerwall charging and hot water. The boiler kicked in once, and then we were pulling from the grid all through the day. We got through the peak times no problem, and actually the Tesla Powerwall lasted most of the night as well. Not all of the night, but most of it. Moving on to the weekend of Saturday the 30th of January, we had a home usage of 81.3 kilowatt hours, so quite high. We had a solar contribution of 1.7 kilowatt hours. We got 13.9 kilowatt hours from the Powerwall, and we had a grid pull of 79.2 kilowatt hours. We were running off the Powerwall from the day before up until the off-peak times where you can see the big spikes. That would have been car charging, Powerwall charging, hot water charging again. The boiler kicking in at 8 AM ish, pulling from the grid throughout the day. Got through the peak times on the battery, and the boiler kicking in again late at night. And the last day of January, Sunday the 31st of Jan, we had a home usage of 71.3 kilowatt hours. We got 2.6 kilowatt hours from the solar. We got 13.6 kilowatt hours out of the Tesla Powerwall, and we had a grid pull of 70.2 kilowatt hours. We charged the battery and heated the hot water first thing in the morning. We had a small amount of car charging, followed by the boiler kicking in for quite some time. Pulled from the grid throughout the day. We charged a little bit more of Powerwall just before the peak, but we did get all the way through the peak before the boiler kicking in again late in the day. Thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe, and if you've got any comments or questions, please add it to the comments section below, and also share how you got on with your solar system and your setup at home. Thanks again. Until